Hello there, welcome to Gaming Theory. What this video is going to be looking into today is advances in gear in next-gen survival type games. I'm going to be covering functions as well as putting forward some ideas of what might work well. This is based on the survival theme of present-day fallen society such as zombie apocalypses, lawless wastelands or something dystopian. So if I'm going to be jumping into what one might expect from next generation survival gear, I'm going to be starting with the good stuff. And this is all the military gear. Let's be honest, right? This is the stuff you're after the most when you spawn in with nothing but jeans, a t-shirt and a toothpick. I suppose you could actually say food and stats first, but after that you're after the weapons or the gear. So with the fabulous default dummy here modelling for us, let us say you get what you need, your food and whatever else, or maybe warmer clothing, etc, and you hit up the military base. You get the plate vest. Brilliant. Right, game on. Next thing you may be lucky enough to find is one of them attachable set of magazine pockets. And this is the first point I want to make, having magazines and other items that will fit visible in the pockets. This could also come accompanied with a range of animations, such as reloading from the vest or something very simple like just turning on a torch. And there's also to keep in mind that some of the pockets come with those top flaps, so they'd have to be animated to open and close too. This is going to be a tricky business, of course, because if you want to use a lot of items, you're going to have pocket flaps that coordinate to their size. So for example, if the item's something particularly long, they might have to be tucked in the back. But the biggest hurdle is going to be the pockets themselves. Say you're not using your average assault rifle, you're using an MP5. You should be able to fit two 9mm magazines in one pocket, and with that you might have to rig it to stretch to avoid clipping. So what I'm trying to say is they should be able to take a variety of different types of magazines, either small or big, and if they're small you can fit more and there's a threshold on that. Overall, this is the future as it adds more detail and realism to your avatar. So carrying on, as you do, you go on to collect more pieces. I'd say the key to military gear is loads more options, more interesting things that hold unique stuff. Also add-ons such as shoulder pads and shock collars, leg plates, kneecaps, and even special types of boots. One thing I want to see in particular is the ammo carriers for shotgun shells. I think they'd be pretty good. And they don't just have to be for an assault vest, they can be worked into your clothes or attached to the stock of a shotgun, and that'll give you some kind of a bonus in speed loading. Another interesting feature, which I think a lot of people would be keen on, is crafting additionals. Many players will like to have a certain setup, and perhaps there's just a few pieces of gear you just can't find because they're very rare. So to make ends meet while you go about trying to find the proper thing, you get some leather and you make, say, a pocket, or perhaps it's just convenience, you're just making the pocket so you can carry more ammunition. You could of course craft bigger stuff, but it's just the little bits like that that do make a difference, I think, and really add a lot more richness to a game. Now looking at this setup, I'd say it's loosely based on a soldier's setup, and that's what it's made for. Though if it is the setting of a fallen civilization where chaos reigns, the survival game needs to cater for the unconventional. Take pirates for instance. As part of their bravado, they'd have loads of guns stuck down their fronts. And say if you were a highway bandit or maybe a person who specialised in pistols, you could portray this too by collecting the gun holders and stacking them down the front. Maybe it's more handier to have a setup like this if you drive a car and you want to shoot out of it or something like that. You have access to guns that you can either pull out with two hands at once, or in a heated close quarters firefight you don't have to worry about reloading because you have another gun at hand. Just to ramble on a bit, I think this setup would be good if you were a driver of a car, especially if you were a lone driver. From a driver's position, a pistol is a lot more agile than an actual rifle, but that's just my 10 cents though. Another thing that comes to mind with placing stuff wherever you want it to be is that everything you collect shouldn't have to be just purposed for one particular area. Most of the things that you collect should be able to be modified to fit wherever you want them. I cannot stress this enough because I'm going to show you one of my absolute pet hates of DayZ now. Now, I'm not backbiting about DayZ because it was a great game, but oh, this used to annoy me so much. The chest holster. Great piece, something that you would get at the start and you'd keep hold of it until you got better gear. But once you changed it out with something else on the chest, that was it. They really should have had a modding option for that, where you could get a knife, for instance, and cut it into a belt, so you could have it still holstered at the hip. The funny thing is when you roll with a piece of gear for a while, you do get attached to it. And for loot hoarders, It is for loot orders like myself, it is very difficult to let things go. But if you could just give that little extra bit of modding to it, you could still keep it with you. But anyway, I could tell you some stories about loot ordering, by the way. But anyway, onward. A really good piece of gear that I think a lot of you would appreciate is a tool belt. If you wanted to be an engineer or a mechanic, this would be really handy as you go around collecting all your tools to build, repair, or to salvage. But for this to be relevant, there really does need to be a lot of depth in crafting, such as the features on this list. Maybe not everything, but at least a fraction of that stuff. Otherwise, it's just going to be looked on as something novelty. I think there's a huge potential in making crafting avenues that are so complex that people can specialize and fulfill certain roles. For there are a lot of players that like battle and adventure, but there's also a lot of players that like crafting, logistics, and building some kind of position or a place that's beneficial to all. Going beyond the tool belt, we've also got straps. This example is typically a strap off a bag, but it should also be able to hold a lot of vital items you might need at hand. Now, this is a function I think would be very good for future games. And when I mean straps in general, whether on bags, whatever. And that's to place things on the strap and be able to slide it up and down. That way, items can be arranged as you see fit. Furthermore, if an item can't be clipped on, there's crafting abilities to tape it, tie it, or thread it. And this takes us on to bags. Now, with bags, I don't think there's anything in particular that needs to come in. I think that most survival games do have a good selection, and what the devs don't do is left to the modders. Though this I will say, and it's regarding the inventory system, the visible by square or tab system, whatever it's called, is going to be the best system for a long time. I can imagine as technology gets better, there'll be a developer that comes forward that will propose for something more realistic, as in putting the items in and out by hand. To take stock of it, you've got to unpack it as true to life. I can only imagine if it's not in some ultra virtual realm, it's going to be as foolish as frying an egg sunny side up in a stock pot, handing your friend a spatula and telling them you want it fished out intact. I smell disaster. Though that aside, I think there is a great function to bags that has been overlooked, and that is the option to pack the bag. So when taking your bag in your hands and triggering that option, it's followed by an animation of your character pushing the items down in the bag. Thus you get an extra 25 to 30% added to your inventory, as well as a model and texture change showing that the bag is under intense stress. Possibly that increases your damage risk, but that's really down to the developers. Quickly touching on more craftable stuff, there's making your own craftable gear from leather. I'd say it's very Mad Max, but if you had leather armor, not only as armor, but a template you could upgrade. You could upgrade it by salvage, such as road signs for instance, or if there's a crafting avenue that delves into workshops, you could make yourself some real nice armor. Now, lastly, I want to talk about something that is quite cool, but would be very difficult to implement. This is something probably a little bit more further away. So, using the military gear again, but you can use anything. Let us say you build up a nice set, and no matter what it is, you can write on it. I have seen this feature before previewed in a game called Identity. They had it for painting pictures. Though interestingly, what if this was brought over to gear and you could really go to town? Well, some of you, of course, looking at this are probably like, yuck. Though nevertheless, because you can make it so personalised, you could really shape the look of a gang. So what I'm suggesting is you can salvage the gear and certain people in the group put it under an art process. This is connected to possibly tribalism in online gaming, and it's something that deserves its own video. It's very deep. Stencils is also another good example. Maybe you're satisfied with a few nice, clean little pieces. And if you can dye the gear black, it's ideal for your post-apocalyptic Templar cult. The possibilities are endless. So that's all I've got, guys. Thank you for joining me. Please rate and subscribe and give me a shout out in the comments if you feel you need to. Please join me for my next video, as we're going to be covering the same subject, but this time it's going to be based on clothes. So look out for that. Thank you very much for your time. You have a great day. All the best.